The prisoner's cry. The cell was cold. The walls were made of smooth black metal, shining faintly in the dim blue light. Inside the cage sat a girl, not human. Her skin was pale silver, glowing softly. Her hair was long and white like snow. She looked young, but her large violet eyes held an old sadness. Her name was Saela. She was not from Earth. She belonged to a peaceful race called the Ilari. But now she was a prisoner, locked in a secret research facility deep underground, on planet Cora 7. She pressed her face against the door's small glass window. A camera blinked red in the corner. She knew they were watching. Still, she spoke again, voice trembling. "Open the door, human. Please. Free me." Outside in the security room, Dr. Heron Voss, a young human scientist, sat silently. He had been assigned to observe the alien subject. That was all they called her. Subject. Not a person, not a girl. Just a valuable piece of living DNA. He had heard her say those words many times over the last few days. But this time something about her voice was different. More scared. More desperate. Heron stared at the screen. She was pacing now, talking fast, but the audio was low. He turned up the volume. "They only want my blood. But once they get what they need, they'll throw me away. You know it's true. I've seen them do it before." Heron felt a chill run down his back. Could it be true? The lab officials had told him that she would be kept safe, treated kindly. But then again, he had seen strange reports. Her blood could cure the gray fever, a deadly virus killing millions. Her DNA was special, immune, pure, too special. He looked again. Saela had stopped pacing. She had sat down, hugging her knees. Tears shimmered on her silver cheeks. Why did he feel like a villain? Later that night, Heron walked the hallway past her cell. He pretended to be checking readings on his datapad. She stood quickly when she saw him. You're different from the others," she said softly. "You don't laugh when I cry. You look human." He paused. Her words hurt. But he didn't speak. She stepped closer to the glass. "They took my sister. They said she was sick. But I saw what they did. She never came back." "You have a sister?" she asked. Heron nodded. "Yes. She's 8. Lives on Earth." Saela smiled weakly. "Then you understand. Please, don't let them take my life. My blood is not just medicine. It's me." Heron opened his mouth to say something, but loud footsteps came from behind. It was Commander Jace, the facility leader. "Move along, Dr. Voss," he barked. "The subject is not your concern. New tests begin tomorrow morning. High Command wants results." "Yes, sir," Heron said quickly and walked away. But his heart was heavy. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her eyes, her voice, her fear. He opened the files on his private tablet. Lab notes, test logs, transport orders. 1. Report made his blood freeze. Sample near 743B, subject Saela. Scheduled for full DNA extraction. Process is fatal. Timeline, 36 hours. They were going to kill her. She was right. The next morning, Saela didn't call out. She just sat in the corner, quiet, broken. Heron stood outside her door with a food tray. He tapped the glass. "I brought you something." She looked up slowly. "Thank you, human." "My name's Heron," he said softly. She blinked. "Heron?" Then she smiled just a little. "It's nice." He glanced around to make sure no one was watching. "You were right," he whispered. "They're going to take everything. You have 36 hours. Saela's eyes widened. "Then help me. Please." Heron hesitated. His mind was at war. If he opened that door, he'd be risking everything, his job, his future. Maybe his life. But if he did nothing, she would die. She reached up, placed her hand against the glass. Slowly, Heron raised his own. Their palms met, separated by a thin layer of glass. She whispered again, Open the door, Harren. Free me. He stared into her eyes, and for the first time in his life, Harren Voss made a decision that wasn't safe. He whispered back. Tonight. The night was quiet, but Harren's heart beat like a war drum in his chest. Inside the deep walls of the research station, nothing had changed on the surface. Guards walked their regular paths, the security lights blinked in a steady rhythm, and doors remained locked tight. But deep inside, something was different. Harren Voss now carried a secret. He had promised the alien girl he would help her escape. But now that the moment was near, fear crawled through his veins like ice. What if he was wrong about her? What if helping her made him a traitor to his own kind? But her voice stayed in his head. Open the door, Harren. Free me. He walked quickly through the hallway that led to the lab. It was nearly midnight. Most of the scientists were gone, and Commander Jace had returned to the command center above ground. Harren stepped into Lab Room 4, where Siella's blood was kept in small glass vials, stored in silver cases, labeled with tags like mutation, resistance, and genetic immunity. The room smelled of steel and sterilization. He looked at the files on the main console, scrolling through reports. One line made him stop cold. Subject will not survive final DNA extraction. Medical use. 92% effective against gray fever in human trials. Clearance for procedure. Approved. By Central Council. So it was true. They didn't just want to study her. They were going to drain her. Every cell. Until there was nothing left. He clenched his fists. She's not a test tube, he muttered. The sound of soft footsteps startled him. He turned fast. Dr. Kale, the quiet old researcher, stood in the doorway. His face was hard to read. I saw the files too, Kale said calmly. Harren swallowed. Then you know. Kale nodded. You're not the first to feel something. She's different kind. I tried to protest, but Jace shut me down. I don't have clearance anymore. Then, help me, Harren said, stepping closer. Help me. Get her out. Kyle stared at him for a long second, then looked away. There are sensors on every door, every step. But there's a utility tunnel. Long forgotten, used during the early construction. No cameras, no guards. Harren felt a small wave of hope. Kyle walked to the cabinet, opened a drawer, and handed Harren an old security card. This still works. Don't ask why I kept it. Harren took the card. His hand shook. Thank you, Kale said almost in a whisper. Just make sure she lives. Hours passed. The final countdown had begun. Scylla sat silently in her cell, back against the wall. She no longer begged. She no longer cried. Her strength was fading. Every test left her weaker. Her silver skin a little dimmer, her voice softer. The cell lights flickered. Then, she heard the beep. The door slid open. Quietly, she looked up. Harren stood there, breathing hard, eyes wide. No sound. He whispered, "Follow me. Now." Scylla didn't speak. She stood quickly, still barefoot, her long white hair tied back, with a strip of cloth. She looked at him once, no fear, just trust, and then followed. They ran through a side hall, past sleeping guard posts and silent machinery. Harren tapped the panel near an old wall. A section of metal slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel filled with dust and hanging wires. "This is it," he said. Scylla crawled in first. Harren followed, pulling the panel closed behind them. The tunnel was dark and smelled like old metal. Every sound echoed too loudly. They moved quickly, hands brushing the walls for balance. Then, Scylla stopped. Harren whispered, "What is it?" She pointed to a small green light above. "Movement detector. If we walk under that, alarms will go off." Harren cursed under his breath. "I didn't see that in the plans." Scylla reached into the band around her wrist and pulled out a thin silver needle. "What's that?" "My people used these to disrupt machines," she said. "It will only work once." She climbed silently, pressing the needle into the control box. It sparked and smoked, and the green light turned off. She dropped back down beside him, breathing hard. "You're full of surprises," he whispered. She gave a tiny smile. "I want to live." They reached the exit hatch. Above it was a ladder leading to the surface, hidden behind a rock outside the base's wall. Heron pushed open the hatch. Cool night air rushed in. Stars filled the sky above. They both paused, feeling the wind on their skin. The first real air. Sayla had tasted in weeks, but before they could move further, alarms screamed behind them. Red lights flashed in the base. "They know," Heron shouted. "Run!" Sayla cried. They took off into the night, bare feet and boots pounding over the rocky ground. Searchlights cut across the hills. Drones lifted from the base, their engines buzzing like angry wasps. "Don't stop," Harin yelled. But Sayla stumbled, her body weak from all the testing. Harin caught her just in time and pulled her arm over his shoulder. "I'm not leaving you," he said. And in that moment, Sayla looked at him like he was the only real thing in the galaxy. They ran through the cold darkness, chased by machines and men. The rocky ground of Cora 7 tore at their feet. Sayla's legs were trembling, her breath coming in weak gasps. Her body was too tired, too damaged from the tests. But she did not stop. Not while Heron held her hand, not while freedom was still in sight. Behind them, search drones lit up the sky like angry stars. Voices echoed through loudspeakers. "Subject escape detected. Immediate capture authorized. Use of force permitted." Heron's heart pounded. He had never broken rules in his life. He had always followed the system, trusted it. But now everything felt different. He was no longer a scientist guarding a test subject. He was a man helping someone survive. And that someone was not just an alien. She was Sayla. They hid behind a jagged rock formation as a drone passed over. Heron pressed Sayla's back to the stone. Her body was burning up. "You're not okay," he whispered. "I'm just tired," she replied, trying to smile. "They took too much blood, but I'll be fine." He shook his head. "We need to find help. I can't carry you forever." Sayla looked up at him. "Why are you doing this, Heron? You could have left me. You had no reason to come back." He looked away for a moment, then back at her eyes. "Because you asked me to, and because someone should have said no to them a long time ago." They moved again when the sky cleared. After a long, painful walk, they reached an old transport station, abandoned since the war. Rusted metal beams creaked in the wind. The place smelled of oil and ash. They crawled inside and shut the door. Sayla collapsed on the floor. Heron ripped his jacket and wrapped her feet. Then he took out a tiny flashlight and looked around. "We'll rest here, but just for an hour," he said. Sayla nodded weakly. Heron sat beside her, watching the shadows move. His thoughts were heavy. There would be no going back after this. He was now a traitor to the Federation, a criminal. But somehow he didn't feel like one. He heard a noise, soft movement outside. He jumped to his feet and drew the small blaster he had stolen from the lab's emergency case. Then the door creaked. Someone stepped in, a woman in a long, dark coat, face covered. Only her glowing orange eyes were visible. Heron raised the blaster. "Who are you?" The woman pulled down her scarf. It was Lyra, a smuggler and part-time rebel. Heron had met her once during a supply mission. She was known to help non-human cargo escape Federation control. "Easy," she said, lifting her hands. "I'm not here to shoot you. Word travels fast, Heron Voss. They've put your face on every outpost screen. You're famous now." "I need help," he said. "She needs help." Lyra looked down at Sayla and frowned. "Ilari. No wonder they wanted her locked up. She's more than her blood," Heron said firmly. "She's dying." Lyra crouched beside Sayla, checked her pulse, then stood. "I can get you both off-world. But I want something." Heron narrowed his eyes. "What?" "I want her story. What they did to her. I want to expose them. Show the galaxy what the Federation does to the innocent." Sayla opened her eyes slowly. You want to use me? No, Lyra said softly. I want the truth. And maybe the truth can protect others. Heron looked at Ciela. She nodded. Deal, Heron said. They moved quickly. Lyra led them to a hidden transport ship beneath the station. It was small and looked broken, but the engines were warm. Heron helped Ciela into the back and strapped her in. Lyra took the pilot seat. The ship lifted just as sirens blared outside. They found us, Lyra yelled. Blaster fire hit the outer hull. Hold on. The ship roared into the sky. Blue light filled the cabin as they broke through the clouds, but a missile locked on them from below. Lyra gritted her teeth. We're not fast enough. Ciela sat up, weak but alert. I can help. She pulled a small glowing crystal from her wrist, something Heron had never seen. It's part of my energy signature. It can jam sensors. You'll burn yourself. Out, Heron warned. If I don't, we'll all die. She pressed it against the ship's control panel. The crystal pulsed, sending a wave through the systems. The missile blinked, lost signal, and exploded far behind them. They were safe. For now. In the silence that followed, Heron looked at Ciela, barely awake, her skin pale. You didn't have to risk that. She smiled softly. I did. Because you did. And for the first time since this escape began, Heron felt something warm inside his chest. Not guilt, not fear, but purpose. The stars outside the window drifted slowly, but inside the ship, time moved fast. Heron sat beside Ciela, who lay on a narrow bed in the back cabin. Her breathing was slow, her face pale like frost. The crystal she used to jam the missile had drained her. She hadn't spoken since they escaped. She just held Heron's hand, weak but steady. Lyra stood at the cockpit, pressing buttons on the console. We'll enter the Marin drift soon, she said. No sensors work in there, we can hide. Heron looked at her through the dim light. How long until she gets help? There's a healer on Havel Station. Non-human, quiet, and asks no questions, Lyra replied. But you have to keep her alive until we get there. Heron nodded. He gently wiped sweat from Ciela's forehead with a cloth. You're strong, he whispered. Just a little longer. The ship shook suddenly. A loud alarm screamed across the control panel. Lyra cursed. Federation intercept signal. They're jamming the nav route. What? I thought we were clear. They must have guessed we'd head for the drift, Lyra said, hands moving fast. They're forcing us to land. Emergency corridor opening on Deck 27 of Outpost Nexon. I can't override it. Heron's stomach dropped. Nexon was a half-dead military station. Old, dangerous, crawling with guards and drones. We'll never make it out of there, he said. Lyra looked at him with cold eyes. Then we make a new way. The ship crash-landed into the docking bay, metal scraping and sparks flying. Doors opened with a hiss, and the air filled with smoke. Alarms blared across the hall. Lights flickered red. Heron carried Ciela in his arms, her body light and cold. Lyra led the way with a blaster ready. The old station was like a maze. Tight corridors, broken panels, and loud echoes that made every step feel louder than it was. This. Way! Lyra shouted, turning down a passage marked maintenance. Footsteps clanged behind them, Federation soldiers moving fast. Split up, Lyra said. I'll draw them away. No, Heron protested, but she was already gone. Heron ducked into a side tunnel, breathing hard. He laid Ciela down gently, then pulled the old security card Kyle had given him. The door at the end had a manual lock. He slid the card. It blinked green. Open. He picked her up again and ran. Behind him, boots stomped louder, voices shouted. Target is near. Do not let the Ilari escape. They reached a corridor that looked like an old lab wing. The walls were cracked, machines half buried in dust. But it was quiet, too quiet. Heron moved carefully, checking each corner. Then, a voice. Cold. Familiar. Dr. Voss. Heron froze. Commander. Jace stood at the far end, armed and armored. Behind him were 3 black-clad guards. Drop the girl, Jace ordered. You've done enough damage. Heron stepped back. She's not property. She's a cure, not a person, Jace said. And you're a scientist, not a hero. She asked me to open the door. I said yes. That makes me human. Jace raised his weapon, but Sayla opened her eyes. Barely. Let me speak, she whispered. Everyone paused. Heron lowered her gently. She stood, just barely leaning against the wall. You fear me because I heal, she said. But you've never asked why my blood is special. It's not science. It's choice. I choose to help. But I will never give that gift to monsters. Jace laughed. You think anyone cares about your words? Your kind are tools, nothing more. He aimed. Sayla raised her hand. A soft light, pure silver, spread from her palm. The air shimmered. The guards gasped, blinking in confusion. Heron felt it too, something inside his chest, warm and heavy, like a memory of peace. Jace stumbled. What? What are you doing? Sayla's voice was steady. Showing you what it feels like to be seen, to be forgiven. The light vanished. One of the guards dropped his weapon. I won't hurt her. The others hesitated. Jace screamed, pulling the trigger. Heron jumped forward. The shot missed Sayla, but hit Haran's side. He collapsed. Sayla cried out, catching him. Jace raised the blaster again. Then Lyra appeared behind him. One shot. Jace fell, stunned. Minutes later, Heron opened his eyes. His shirt was soaked with blood. Sayla pressed a cloth to the wound. You'll live, she whispered. He managed a smile. Still not a hero. To me, you are. The stolen ship was waiting. Lyra had found another route. With Heron resting and Sayla watching over him, they left the station behind. No alarms this time, no chasing drones, just stars and the open sky. The stars faded as the small ship entered orbit around an uncharted moon, its surface hidden by thick green clouds. Lyra adjusted the controls with sharp focus while Heron rested in the back, his wound wrapped tightly in bandages. He was pale. Eyes closed, breath shallow but alive. Sayla sat beside him, holding his hand, her fingers trembling not from fear, but from how close she had come to losing him. We can't keep flying blind, Lyra said from the pilot seat. We need to land and repair. His bleeding won't stop unless we find shelter and food. Sayla turned to her, eyes filled with quiet fire. Then take us down. Somewhere safe. Lyra gave her a long look, then nodded. Hold tight. The ship broke through the clouds, shaking violently. Lightning danced around them, but the controls held steady. Below, a wild landscape stretched out. Endless green forests, silver rivers, and strange glowing plants the size of houses. There were no cities, no signals, no humans, just untamed alien wild. Lyra landed the ship near a cluster of thick trees, shaped like spirals. Vines reached toward the sky like arms. The moon had no name, but Lyra called it Saluna, a place smugglers used to vanish. Once the ship powered down, silence took over. A deep, living silence, the kind that made a person feel small. Sayla helped Heron out carefully. His feet touched the mossy ground, and he grunted from the pain but didn't complain. He looked at the world around them. Where are we? Nowhere, Lyra answered, stepping out with her blaster ready. That's the point. They found a cave hidden behind a waterfall of glowing liquid. It wasn't water. It shimmered like stars and hissed when touched. But the cave behind it was dry and warm, protected from the wind and any sky drones that might pass. Lyra set up a small heat lamp while Sayla tore strips from her clothing to change Heron's bandage. You're doing well, she whispered, brushing hair from his forehead. He opened one eye and smiled. You make a good outlaw nurse. She chuckled softly. Don't talk. Save your strength. Outside the cave, strange bird-like creatures called in haunting tones. The air was thick, with the smell of sap and something sweeter, like fruit, but wilder. Lyra returned after an hour with a pack full of glowing fruits and purple leaves. "Edible," she said. "Tasted some. Still alive." They all laughed, a soft sound that felt strange after so much running. Scylla took the fruit and pressed a piece to Heron's lips. He took a bite, his face relaxed. For the first time in days, it felt like maybe they were safe. That night, under a sky filled with 2 blue moons, Scylla walked alone through the forest. The plant seemed to move as she passed, not from wind but from knowing. Her Alari blood sang quietly in the wild. This place, so full of life, reminded her of home. She knelt beside a small silver pool, touched the surface, and closed her eyes. "Ilarian prayer?" a voice said behind her. She turned. Lyra stood there, arms crossed, watching. "It's old," Scylla said softly. "We used to thank the stars for letting us breathe freely, for keeping our hearts soft." Lyra nodded, slowly. "I never believed in much, but I believe you're not like the others, and that scares the people in charge. They fear what they can't control," Scylla replied. "My DNA, it only heals because I allow it, but when they tried to take it, force it, it refused. They called it failure. I call it choice." Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "The galaxy should hear your voice, not just your blood." Back in the cave, Heron was awake. He sat against the wall watching the soft flickering of light on the stone. When Scylla returned, he smiled faintly. "You okay?" he asked. "I should ask you that," she said. He nodded. "I'm alive thanks to you." "You're alive because you chose me," she whispered. "When you had every reason to walk away." Heron's eyes grew serious. "I didn't do it because you were special. I did it because you were someone. No one deserves to be locked up like that." She sat beside him. "I never believed a human could care that deeply," she said. "I never believed an alien could feel so human," he replied. They laughed. Soft, real, tired. Scylla leaned her head on his shoulder. For a long moment they didn't speak. They just listened to the sounds of the alien wild, buzzing lights, distant hums, and the slow beat of their joined breaths. Far above them, in the dark of space, Federation ships moved again. They had tracked. The energy burst from Scylla's crystal. They were coming. But down on the moon beneath the silver sky, 3 lives rested in silence, and the stars held their secrets a little longer. The peace did not last. 2 days passed in the alien wilds, and the cave felt like a small world of its own. Heron's wound was healing slowly with Scylla's gentle care. Lyra took watch by night, hunting and gathering strange food that somehow nourished them. Scylla sometimes walked barefoot outside the cave, feeling the hum of life in the ground. Her silver skin was beginning to glow again. For the first time she had started to believe they might actually be safe. But on the 3rd morning, a sound changed everything. It came low, distant at first. A mechanical whine, barely a whisper. But it grew louder by the second. A sound that didn't belong in nature. Engines. Lyra ran into the cave, face grim. "They found us." Heron stood too fast, nearly falling. "How?" Scylla's eyes closed for a moment. "They followed the energy trail from the crystal. It was only a matter of time." Lyra pulled out her blaster and checked the charge. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they land. I counted 3 ships. That's not a search party. It's a capture team." "Then we run," Heron said. Lyra shook her head. "Too late. They're surrounding this area. I saw tracking beacons dropped from above. We'll be cornered in under an hour." Scylla looked at Heron. "Then we don't run. We draw them in. Where we choose." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You have a plan?" "I know these woods now," Scylla said. "And this world speaks to me. There's a clearing beyond the ridge, surrounded by pulse thorns. We can trap them there." "A trap?" Heron asked, surprised. Scylla nodded. They used me like an experiment. Now I make the rules. They moved fast through the twisted forest, the sky above filled with the growl of low-flying ships. Strange beasts ran from the noise. Long-legged lizards, floating jellyfish-like creatures, and birds that whistled like flutes. Sayla led them with steady steps, bare feet leaving no trace. She touched certain trees, whispered to them. The plants seemed to react, curling inward, moving their vines away. Soon they reached the clearing she spoke of, a bowl-shaped patch of glowing moss surrounded by thorn-covered trees. The thorns pulsed with red energy, each as sharp as glass. "We can guide them here," Sayla said, looking around. "The moment they enter, the thorns will sense aggression. If they fire first, they won't get out." Lyra grinned. "I like it. Nature fights dirty." They didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, boots hit the ground. Dozens of black-armored soldiers moved through the trees, slow and cautious, weapons raised. Red lights blinked on their suits. Commander Jace was gone, but in his place came a new figure. General Talon, a man known across the stars for his cruelty. He was tall, face hidden behind a sharp helmet, voice filtered through a machine. "Alien." "Female," he said over the loudspeaker. "You are surrounded. Surrender peacefully and your death will be painless. Resist and we take you piece by piece." Sayla stepped forward into the middle of the clearing. Her voice was clear. "I'm not yours to take." Talon motioned, and soldiers moved in. Lyra fired first, just a warning shot hitting the ground near one soldier's foot. That was all it took. The soldiers opened fire, and the thorns reacted. Red vines shot outward like snakes. Soldiers screamed as weapons were knocked from their hands. Others were pulled off their feet, slammed into the glowing moss. One fell into a pit of roots and vanished. Chaos exploded in seconds. Heron grabbed Sayla and pulled her back toward the ridge. "Come on, we have to move." But Sayla stopped. Her eyes were locked on one soldier trapped in the vines. The man was yelling, trying to pull free. She saw his face, young, barely older than a boy. She moved forward again. "Sayla." "No," Heron shouted, but she placed her hand on the thorns. They froze. The vines recoiled and the boy dropped to the ground, shaking but alive. Sayla turned to the forest and raised both arms. A low hum vibrated through the air. Leaves turned upward. The wind held its breath. "I forgive them," she said softly, "even when they don't deserve it." The plants pulled back, returning to stillness. A heavy silence followed. General Talon stood, one of few left unharmed, his weapon aimed at her head. "You're a fool," he said coldly. "Mercy means weakness." Sayla looked him in the eyes. "No, mercy is strength you'll never understand." Talon pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. His weapon was gone, ripped, away by a vine moments earlier. Lyra appeared behind him. One punch. Talon dropped. Back at the cave, Heron sat in the moss, breathing hard. His side throbbed, but he was alive. So was Sayla. Lyra leaned against a tree, smiling. "You didn't just trap them," she said to Sayla. "You taught them something." Sayla sat beside Heron and leaned against him gently. "Not all of them, but one might remember. That's enough." Heron looked into her glowing eyes. "You saved even the ones trying to kill you." "I saved them," she whispered, "so I wouldn't become like them." He smiled and squeezed her hand. Far above, the Federation ships were silent, crippled, without a commander. And for the first time, the sky belonged only to the stars. The morning after the battle, the alien wilds were quiet, not silent. Life still moved among the silver trees and glowing moss. But the violence had passed. The thorns no longer pulsed red. The plants no longer stirred in warning. The forest was breathing calmly again. Peace had returned, for now. Inside the cave behind the waterfall, Heron sat beside the small fire, holding a warm drink made from the forest's sweet roots. His wound had closed, though the scar would remain. He didn't mind. It reminded him of what they'd survived. Sayla knelt at the edge of the glowing stream that ran beside the cave. Her silver hair shimmered under the morning light. She wasn't praying this time. She was thinking. Lyra approached from behind, her coat dusty, a fresh burn on her shoulder. "A transmission came through," she said quietly. "From Kyle. He's alive, still hiding." Sayla stood and turned to her. "What did he say?" Lyra handed over a small device. A faint, broken message played. "The Federation is weak now. Your escape caused a storm, but they still want you. They know your DNA is the key, not just for curing gray fever, but for stopping death itself. They won't stop hunting. But there's another way. Come to Haven's Reach. There, you can speak to the entire galaxy." Haran listened from behind. "They'll listen to her? After everything they've done?" Lyra shrugged. "If she's brave enough to show her face and strong enough to speak, maybe. Or maybe they'll just try to take her again." Sayla looked down at her hands. She had once begged to be free. Now the galaxy was begging for her return. That night the stars above Saluna were bright, clear, and wide. Haran and Sayla sat on a flat stone outside the cave, watching the moons drift across the sky. He looked at her, his voice soft. "If we go back, if you speak to them, they'll ask you to give your blood. Again." "I know," she said. "But this time it will be my choice." "And if they ask for too much?" Sayla didn't answer right away. She let the wind carry her silence. Then she said, "I am not a weapon. I'm not a cure. I'm a living soul. I'll give what I can, but not to serve the powerful, only to protect the innocent." He reached for her hand. "You don't have to save the whole galaxy," she smiled. "Maybe not, but maybe, just maybe. I can help but remember how to be kind." 3 days later, the small ship lifted from Saluna's surface, carrying 3 souls and one last chance for peace. Lyra piloted in silence. Haran sat near the back, watching Sayla as she prepared herself. She wore a simple robe now, no longer a prisoner's jumpsuit. Her eyes were calm. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was steady. "What if they still want to lock me away?" she asked. Haran stood and stepped closer. "Then we fly again. As many times as it takes." She looked at him with something deeper than thanks. "Would you really follow me, no matter where I go?" He nodded. "I already did." The ship entered orbit above Haven's Reach, a floating city among the stars. It was neutral ground, watched by all races, owned by none. The Council of Speakers met there, and millions watched its transmissions across the galaxy. As the ship docked, news spread like wildfire. The Alari girl lives. The human scientist who freed her stands at her side. Will she forgive us, or destroy us? Sayla stood before the great council chamber. Lights above blinked red, yellow, and green. Every seat filled. Some came for hope, others came for fear. Many came only for power. She walked forward, alone, her steps slow but firm. They asked questions about her blood, about her people, about what she could give, and Sayla answered, "I am not a cure. I am not a weapon. I am a voice of those who were locked away, silenced, and forgotten. I will not give my gift to those who use it for war, but I will share it only if you agree to never again take from the innocent." Silence followed, then whispers, then the light above blinked green. Approval. In the weeks that followed, a new law was written. No living being shall be tested without voice and choice. Sayla's DNA was stored, but only with her permission. She worked alongside scientists, teaching, not bleeding, healing, not hiding, and Haran stayed by her side. Always. They didn't become rulers. They didn't seek power, but they became something stronger. Symbols, reminders. That sometimes freedom comes not from running, but from standing still and speaking truth. In a quiet valley, far from cities, Ciela once returned to a simple forest with twin moons. She walked barefoot, letting the wild whisper to her again. Heron followed behind, smiling. She turned and said, "You were the first door that opened." "And you," he replied, "were the first soul I saw." They stood together, under stars that now watched in peace.